So I was thinking about like what would it be like if the origin characters of Baldur's Gate 3, like Shadowheart, Carla, etc., like what if they were D&D characters? What would their players be like? Like the person who would make Shadowheart as a character, what would that person be like? So I don't know. I just started recording this. I don't actually like know why. I just started like thinking about it and I was like, okay, this could be a video. So I'm sitting down and I'm doing it. So here we go. So first on the list is Aarian. I think we're going in alphabetical order. So first on the list is Aarian. Aarian is definitely the player that people were worried about. You know, like they're friends with everybody else. Like this person is friends with the other players, but he doesn't talk much. You know, he's not talking in the group chat. He's not hanging out at like the gatherings. And it's not because like he's mean or people don't like him. You know, it could be he doesn't have time or it could be something else. But the point is, like, no one really knew how Aarian's player would play. And when he was proposing Aarian as a character, like the DM and the rest of the players, like they were kind of worried. You know, Aarian's kind of edgy. He's definitely on the darker side of that morality. And on top of that, on the DM's end, the DM was thinking like, this isn't really associated with the, you know, the Illithid and the Dead 3 plot that I've got going on. Like this is very different. But Aarian's player is just really, really good at role playing. Like even though he's like quiet dude, when he gets into the game, he starts playing this character, like he just oozes this charisma that everybody loves. And the DM like went out of their way to create like as many things to like be associated with Aarian's character as possible, just so that he could get more hooked into the plot as the campaign goes along. So the DM comes up with like the scars on his back and like hooks him into Raphael. And even though like Kazdor is definitely not associated with like any of the ball stuff or any of the Dead 3 stuff in general or the Absolute, they created an entire dungeon out of Kazdor just so Aarian can get like more story content, because Aarian's player is just really good at role playing, and the other players, they really enjoy it. And it's not like Aarian's like a selfish role player. Like Aarian's the kind of role player who's clearly having a good time, like they're clearly having a lot of fun, but they also want other people to have fun interacting with his character. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's Aarian's player. Oh goodness. Aarian was the guy everyone was kind of worried about. But Karlach is the girl everybody wanted. Like, the group's getting together to decide, like, who are we inviting to D&D? Karlach was, like, the first name up. Like, Karlach's player, everybody wanted her in the game immediately. Like, she's really chummy with everybody. She's super friendly. She's super fun. And I feel like Karlach's player has been playing D&D for a little bit. Like, Aarian's got some experience, but Karlach's been playing for a few years now, like a few campaigns. But yeah, when Karlach jumps into the game, like, you know, she's really likable. Everybody likes her. I feel like she's also friends with Will's player. Like, she's friends with everybody at the table. But, like, Will's player especially, Karlach's, like, good mates with him. And they made this, like, antagonistic and friendly relationship between their characters at the get-go just because they wanted to have that association. Karlach's player doesn't have, like, any, like, theater experience, but Karlach's player, like, busts out these crazy scenes out of nowhere. Like, I feel like, you know, everybody knows this person is good at the game, but when she starts role-playing and, like, getting really into character, she does these really impassioned and epic moments that everybody just really loves and gets into, and it shocks everybody, but in a really, really good way. Like, people really like the way Karlach role-plays. I feel like Karlach is the kind of person that when the game is done and everybody's like getting ready to wrap up, like she's the kind of person who's like, whoa, does anyone want to play like a video game or something? And then she gets everybody back onto Discord and like they play games together. Like, I feel like Karlach's that kind of person who just wants to hang out with friends and makes people want to hang out together. Like, she joins the gathering, life of the party, makes everything way, way better. Like, that's the person who plays Karlach. And as a barbarian, she's really good in combat. Like, she's not like min-maxing or anything like that, but she's definitely got like a solid barb build and is really good at tanking and really happy whenever she's just frustrating the DM with taking all these hits and dealing all this damage, because she's got like a good solid barbarian build going for her character. Okay, so Shadowheart's player. So Shadowheart's player, she's not. I feel like Shadowheart's player is pretty new, but she has a lot of theater experience, and she's new to the game, so she starts out with that, like, that new player character, that standoffish kind of edgy type character. Like, that's the way a lot of people start off with, and I feel like that's why Shadowheart's player is new to the game, because that's kind of the way Shadowheart starts out. And she didn't have the backstory fleshed out right away. Like, she just saw, like, oh, I'm a cleric, I need a god, picked Shar, whatever. The DM proposed the memory erasure plot because Shadowheart's player didn't really have a backstory ready in time, so the DM was like, oh, you could have amnesia. That's, like, my go-to move. Amnesia is, like, a good, like, 1-2 interesting plot hook thing. And as the campaign went on, though, Shadowheart's player started doing more research, and she got, like, really into the Shar lore, and her and the DM started working together to build out this stuff for her character, like the Gauntlet of Shar, or her tie-in with, like, Ketheric Thorn being a Sharan guy. Like, that all really worked out in her favor, and as her backstory elements started, like, showing up in the campaign more and more, Shadowheart's player started getting, like, really, really into it, and her role-playing only got better and better, like, using that acting experience. I feel like that's the kind of player Shadowheart would have, like, somebody who's new to role-playing in a TTRPG, but not new to being, like, an actress, and she brings out, like, really strong roleplay moments. Like, people had expectations because she had that experience, but she even knocks those out of the park. Like, she's doing a really, really solid job. Also, like I said earlier, I feel like she either does the tarot card readings or she joins Aarian for tarot card readings. I don't know why I have tarot cards in the mind, but that's just, like, the vibe I'm getting from her. I'm thinking, there was another thing I was thinking. I was definitely thinking something else about Shadowheart. Oh, I remember. So, I think that Shadowheart's player, everybody wants a romancer. Like, there's a moment in Critical Role Campaign 2 where Jester asks, does anyone have a crush on me? And Beauregard responds with, you know that everybody does. Like, that's Shadowheart's player. She's not aware of it, but it's true. Like, everybody wants to romance her character. It's becoming a thing. And even though she's not expecting it, she's not opposed to doing a romance either. So yeah, there you go. Like, that's my idea for Shadowheart's player. Somebody who's new to the game, but, like, a really strong role player who worked really hard with DM to create, like, a cool character and, like, grew as a role player as the campaign progressed. Okay, Gail is... He's been playing for a long time. Like, I'm talking, he started playing in, like, the 70s, 80s. He's been doing this a while. He's older than, like, the other members of the group, but, they invited him because, like, he's really nice as a dude, and also he's really experienced with D&D, so he was, like, a no-brainer. And he didn't want to overshadow anyone, but also he didn't want his, like, knowledge of Forgotten Realms lore to be just, like, thrown aside. He didn't want to, like, just move that to the side in his brain. He didn't think he could do that, so he was, like, working with the DM, like, hey, could I create, like, an archmage who lost his power, and thus Gail was born. So now this player can use all of his knowledge of Forgotten Realms lore to his advantage and actually, like, monologue and give exposition and explain things about the game, like, as Gail. And, like, as a player, like, in combat, Gail isn't... I don't think Gail would be, like, a crazy powerful wizard. I actually think this player's kind of holding back. Like, he could make Gail an absolute powerhouse with, like, perfectly picked spells that counterbalance everybody else in the party perfectly, but I feel like he didn't want to do that. Like, he purposefully held back so that he doesn't overshadow anybody else. But, like, when talking about, like, role play and when talking about, like, the history of the world, I think this guy's, like, helping out the DM. Like, he's pulling back in combat, but in terms of lore, like, he allows the DM, he's, like, okay with DM making changes, but if he comes up with an idea, like, I feel like he tells DM. Like, I think the Crown of Karsus, if this was a D&D campaign, I think the Crown of Karsus would be Gail's player's idea. Like, he told the DM about that, and the DM was like, oh, that would be an interesting concept, and they worked together to add that in. Like, that kind of, like, player-DM collaboration. I feel like that's the kind of player that Gail is. Yeah. Ooh. Okay. Lael, I don't know why. Lael's giving me min-maxer vibes. Like, not to the point where, like, it's a problem, because as we're gonna get to when I talk about the DM, I think the DM of this campaign is, like, brutally hard. So Lael being a min-maxer is not a big deal. But, like, I think Lael's player, like, she's not she's not the roleplay girly. Like, she can roleplay, and she does roleplay, but she really enjoys combat, and she's really good at it, and she made a fighter that is super powerful. Like, she set out a goal. Like, I want to make a Githyanki fighter that's as strong as she can possibly be, and that's what she did. Like, yeah, fighter's probably not, like, the best class ever for min-maxing, but, you know, this player set out a goal, and she achieved it. I think that if, you know, we're playing a game, like, Lael's got all the optimized magic items that she can, like, wring out of the DM. Lael's player is the one who's, like, tactically making the decisions. I also feel like Lael's player is the kind of person who would, like, shout a tactically good move, and the DM's like, hey, no metagaming, and then Lael's player kind of, like, has to, like, peel back a little bit, but the other players, like, welcome it, because, again, the DM's campaign, I think it would be really hard. But yeah, I feel like, I don't know why, but Lael's giving me those min-maxer vibes. Also, I feel like Lael's player in real life is a really busy lady. Like, she's got stuff going on. Like, she makes time for the game, but, you know, when Carla invites everyone to play video games, Lael's the one who's booking. It's like saying, like, hey, I'm sorry, I got work tomorrow. And you know what? Good for her. Like, she plays the nerd game for a little bit, but then she gets back to the real world and, like, gets to work. But she always, I feel like she's the kind of person who makes time for the game. Also, I don't know why, but because of that, no, I do know why. Because of that, though, Lael's also the person that they kind of need a schedule around, and it's not to the point where anybody's, like, frustrated by it, because they want Lael's player there. Like, even though she's not, like, a super big role player, she's really valuable in combat, and she does enjoy role-playing with the rest of the group, and they're all friends, but I do think Lael's the person, like, oh boy, when we're scheduling, ooh, did anyone ask Lael's player? Like, I think, like, that's the vibe I'm getting from her. Like, hardworking lady, you know, who's got a tight schedule, but makes time for the game when she can, and really enjoys just knocking the crap out of monsters. So Will's the one that's clearest in my head. I think he got into D&D because of Critical Role. I don't know why, but, like, that's the vibe. Or, like, a Critical Role type thing. Like, definitely an actual play show. That's what got him into it. And he's just really into heroic fantasy. Like I said with, like, Carla's player, he's definitely best friends with her. Like, they definitely made their characters together, like, came up with the ideas, maybe even worked together to create Mizora and the relationship with Zariel. I feel like both of them, for some reason, are really into, like, hell lore, and worked with either Gail's player or the Dungeon Master, or both, to, like, make that all work. And then, like, Will, as like a player in game, like, he's really good at roleplay, you know, not to the degree of, like, Carla or Shadowheart, but he's, like, a really strong role player in his own right, and you really like saying Blade of Frontiers. Like, he came up with that title, and he's not letting it go. And, like, yeah, to, like, an outsider, like, somebody who's, like, looking in from the outside of the table, like, cringy, whatever, but the other players, they think it's cool too, so they let it slip. In terms of combat, not a super min-max warlock, but he's as min-max as, like, a warlock can get, you know what I mean? Like, he built into Eldritch Blast, and he's gonna spam the crap out of that, you know? He's gonna spam Eldritch Blast, and he's smart with his spell use, but he's pretty conservative with his spell use. Like, he's got that Eldritch Blast, he tosses out some other stuff, but it's mostly Eldritch Blast. Like, he wants to be the Blade of Frontier so bad, but he quickly realized, like, melee warlock might not be the play 100%, and he's really thinking of respecking Will as a fighter warlock multi-class eventually whenever he gets the opportunity. Also, Will's player is bringing the snacks. Like, he's the guy who brings, like, the big box of snacks that everybody eats out of, and he brings it every time, and everyone's like, oh, you don't need to do that, but he insists every time I'm bringing it because it clearly makes everyone happy. Like, he's definitely that kind of guy. You know, definitely the sort of dude you want to get along with. Okay, the DM. The DMing for a while, not like 30 years, kind of like not as long as Gail's player has been playing, but, like, the DM has definitely been DMing for, like, a few years now, like at least 7. Pretty experienced, but not like an expert. And this is like I think this is like their first roleplay heavy campaign. Like, this is the first time they're really getting into, like, the Forgotten Realms lore. They've done, like, combat heavy, like, dungeon type stuff for a long time, but this is the first time they're like, okay, I want to make a campaign with a lot of role playing because I can tell my players really like that. and they dove headfirst into making this Mind Flayer plot with the Dead 3 and all this stuff, but they didn't know everything, so they needed some help. You know, Shadowheart's player gave the idea for like the Shar tie-ins, and Gail's player gave the idea for the Crown Karsus, and probably helped out with some other elements, like the more specific lore elements. I feel like the DM, they voraciously consume Mr. Rex videos. Like, they watch tons of Mr. Rex videos and like are taking notes and stuff to like include in the campaign. Like, they're that kind of guy who just really enjoys Forgotten Realms lore and like wants to integrate it and wants to do a good job of integrating it too. Like, they're okay with taking creative liberties, but they like this lore and they want to use it. In terms of like how they run combat, dude, like, it's brutal. It's really brutal. Like, sometimes the DM is like worried, but because, I mean, it is hard. Like, they're DMing for like 6 players, right? Like, this is a lot of people, and it's hard to balance around that, especially since like sometimes Lael's player isn't there or another player's got a dip. So, you know, you don't always have the whole party. So it's really, really hard for them as a DM to balance. And it usually strays on like the super hard end, but the DM at the end of the day, like, he's making sure. But the DM at the end of the day, they're making sure that everybody makes out. Like, the DM wants the party to win, but they're also okay with knocking them senseless, you know? Like, this is not going to be a clean journey. You're going to need to make sacrifices. It's going to be hard sometimes. You're going to need to try in order to make it through. And they're really good at making NPCs, and especially villains. The DM doesn't usually know how to integrate the villains to get the players to roleplay them. Like, they love creating villains like Ketheric Thorm, but unfortunately don't know how to make it so the players roleplay with them often. So unfortunately, they just don't get like the time and spotlight that they need, which is one of the skills DM like really wants to work on. But yeah, I think that's the kind of DM who would run Baldur's Gate 3 like as a D&D game. What am I doing?